go. There we go. Okay. Hey, good morning. It takes me a minute to go from my Zoom over to live on our closed Facebook group. So if you're having a great Monday, I am going to let Polani in. And then I'm going to start my recording. Good morning, Polani. All right. You are my first entry into the Zoom room. And welcome this morning. It's Monday Motivation. Millionaire Real Estate Agent book continued. I'm Sally Hayes, the assistant team leader, and we are going to be talking about pages 249, I believe, to 262. And we're still in the topic of going from earning $1 million in your real estate business to netting $1 million, and the 16 challenges that go along with that small window there as you hone your skills and master your business. And remember, it's time on task over time. There's a lot of failing forward, and we win or we learn, right? Those are some things that KW always tells us. So we're talking about money. So it's still part of number 13, combining quality service and quantity service. And we're going to be talking about sticking to the budget and controlling cost, and then talking about you and some of the things that we can do around focus. So on page 249 at the bottom of the page, it says, in business, money is always an issue, always. So whether you have too little or even if you got more than you were expected, it's an ongoing issue or topic for you in your business. And 3 of your goals is revenue up, right? Cost down, and net income up, what you actually get to keep. There are a lot of agents that have a lot of revenue or gross commission income, and they don't take home a whole lot of money. And isn't it true of that in our personal lives a lot of times? So money talks about that. And it's a battle to become proficient and familiar with the economic model. Remember, go backwards in time. We've talked about the 4 models several times, and the economic model is the first one. And just curious, if you know all the 4 economic models of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, pop them in the comments. Tell me what they are. I just want to know if you remember them. And there is a clever acronym for remembering them also, okay? So I want to see you type in, rub your sleepy eyes this morning, and add the 4 economic models in the chat there. So the battle is a real one. And there are 2 monetary disciplines when it comes to your money. And the first one is sticking to your budget. First of all, you have to have created a budget, right? That might be one of the models. Sticking to the budget, and then controlling your cost. And of course, the book that, I don't know if you know this or not, but our market center, which is what Keller Williams calls their offices, right? That's our Kellerism name for them, run on the models of a mega agent in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. So our office has a budget. In the middle of the year, we look back through it. Of course, we create it at the end of the year. It has to be blessed by the Agent Leadership Council here. That's our board of directors of the office. And it's sent to the region. They have to look at it also. And then we're held accountable to that. And if there are variances and we have a little bit of flexibility, but there's a variance number that if we go beyond that, we have to get permission for that. And so there's this similarity between how we run and how you run when you start running your business at this level. So controlling cost is important. And so much of the difference between having a business that earns $1 million and one that nets $1 million is centered on those 2 monetary disciplines, sticking to the budget and controlling your cost. And sticking to the budget is harder than it looks. And if any of you have gone through the Dave Ramsey program and know the every dollar budget, every dollar, it is that, right? So, and it's a discipline and it's a habit. And controlling cost is easier than it sounds. So these things are habits. So sticking to the budget and controlling your cost is one of the 14 challenges. It's number 14 of the 16 of the MREA. Earn to net $1 million. So on page 250, it looks a little bit closer to that, sticking to the budget. And it takes repetition with someone who is comfortable with the tools of that. And that is the income, profit and loss statement, and preparing a budget. So some of those things that you may or may not have experience around is a little know-how around that, correct? So you may have to get some professional expertise. So, and I see you on here, Paulani. If you have any dive in on any of this conversation, give me your input. I'd love to hear from you. I see you on the screen.
Well, definitely the budget is, as you said, it's easy to create, but then making sure you follow it is not as easy as it sounds. So I like the part about it where it talks about putting a process in place so that you can stick to your budget and you have reviews and checkpoints and whatever that process is for you to help you stick to your budget so you don't overspend or underspend. They don't talk about underspending in here though. I have found that that's an issue at times.
Okay, so talk a little bit more about that, Polani, about underspending. In the beginning of the book, it says that money is always an issue, whether it's not enough or too much.
Right, but so for like the underspending, right, you want to make sure you're marketing, if you have a listing and you're underspending on what you should be marketing that listing for, because that's going to take some cost to market the listing. And so if you don't have that budget item there and you're not tracking to see, did I actually spend the budget that I would normally do for a listing? And if you're, setting yourself like 15% under, whoa, what happened? What didn't I do? And so that's that other check and balance to make sure you're in budget, but also that if you're under budget, then maybe you're not going to get another, potential buyers from that listing or any other leads that you should be getting from that listing, but you haven't spent the money you should have.
I love that, Polani. I think that's, when we look at the Tennessee form and the listing agreement, there's a portion in there that agents don't want to talk about, right? It's that piece that says if you don't do your job and they let you go, that you're going to collect marketing dollars for your time and effort on marketing the listing. And so there's a point where you're like, well, what would that be? Like, so if you know what you're spending on a listing, you wouldn't have to figure that out. You would already know it. Well, I typically spend X amount of dollars when I market this is what I do every time. This is how much money I know I spend when I market a listing, rather than, oh my gosh, what do I charge them? I don't know what I charge to spend on a listing. So I think that is a great point to bring up during this section, especially finding buyers. That's our goal, is to get buyers from listings. And we talked about that previously.
Right. And understanding that underspending in certain key areas is really going to be counterproductive against the, your ultimate net $1 million.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and I love on page 251, it says, and you just brought this up, reviewing it. Keeping it simple. Don't rush out and enroll. You don't have to rush out and enroll in an MBA program or accounting program. Just keep yourself accountable. And that comes back down to the calendar, which is really, I think, besides leads, listings, leverage, it's calendar, because everything you have to get done in all of the pieces, if it's not on your calendar, it doesn't exist in your life. And you go for maybe months and realize that you haven't looked at your budget, you haven't looked at your spending, and you've been operating entrepreneurial instead of purposeful in the E2P model. So I think there are going to be disc profiles that have a little bit more discipline in this area than others. And I think that it's a habit in knowing yourself. And some of it may be harder for some individuals than other individuals, when it says, don't treat your budget lightly, don't alter it easily, and always look for areas where you can reduce expenses. Trial and error can sometimes be effective. And that saying no and learning to ask why around money spends. And so this is really more also about a group of people together, right? We've talked about being a team and all the things and the holding people accountable. You may have other people in your organization that are in charge of or have the power to spend money, and you want to always be looking at that and ask questions about why they're spending it and what really is the return on your investment. Did you see the part in the middle of the book where I've said this? I've said this, so I highlighted it. It's talking about the disciplines and reducing cost and not, just doing things willy-nilly. It says casual spending is an issue. And then the saying of the phrase, this is only the cost of a commission from one more sale. Right?
I've heard people say that.
Yes. And that's the bane of the MREA agent, because it's going ahead and letting you off the hook from your budget because you're justifying it. If you make one sale from it, it's paid for itself, right? But that's not a budget in your spending. So I think that's very true from a lot of people. I've heard that the whole time I've been in real estate, as that is a reason or a justification for spending money on something.
Right. When they really should be thinking, if I'm spending this amount of money, average commission or whatever, $7,000, then it should give me an X number of return, not just the $7,000, but what is it in
Right.
your budget that you have? Is it supposed to be a 9% return,
Mhm.
or a 10% return? That would be that. If it was 10%, hey, you should be getting $70,000 from that $7,000 that you spent.
True. That is a great point. I love that. So it says those that have the most confidence in the ability to generate money often have the greatest difficulty keeping it.
That's the, it's only going to cost one commission to do this.
Well, it says when you build in a system and a process, which this whole book is about, systems and processes, they tend to serve two purposes. First, they help you keep your good habits and then do the right things. And second, they make it very, very difficult to regress into old bad habits and do the wrong things. So I take that as, everything in your life, just like when you go to Quantum Leap, it talks about every aspect of your life, not just becoming a millionaire real estate agent. It just talks about your health, your spiritual life, your relationships. Those all have habits around them, and habits are either great for you or they keep you from growing, right? And it's the same thing here. We regress back into the patterns we've already created because it's easy. It's the rut in the road, right? It's already worn, and we can just get in. When we get stressed out, we can get back in the groove. So that applies here to keeping the budget and it being not an easy thing to do. So it has to be on the calendar once a month, once a week, however you style it, that is good for you and your business, right? I like on page 252, this is also how we run the market center. So there's two things to keep you accountable, and that's around opening accounts, a deposit account and an operating expense account. So of course, deposits are your revenue coming in. And when you know your budget, you know exactly how much you're going to be spending, and it goes in the expense account. So it helps you to avoid overspending money on things that aren't in the budget. And if you have to add money, more money than you thought, you have somebody to hold you accountable for that. And the variance or justification is in some sort of a written format and review before the money can be transferred to keep you on task on that. It makes you aware of all the items that are there. So I like that idea.
Sorry. Do you guys actually have like a variance justification form that you use, like a real true form you created? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that. You could, yeah. And we do. We have to have anything around a certain amount for the office has to be approved by the region because we've turned in our budget to them.
Do they make you put in this written plan that they talk about in here?
Yeah, you have to submit it.
With the, so like your return on investment and all of those things are in there?
No, not that, but they'll,
Okay.
no, you know what? I don't know the answer to that. So I'm going to say that I don't know the answer if they make you, fill out what your return on investment is on whatever you're spending. I know that there's accountability piece to it. I mean, we are individually owned and operated with them as an umbrella, but there are some checks and balances to help us be profitable. So they
Right.
definitely look at, and they help us if they see areas that we need help in or conversations around. I know Kathy's world, she's about ready to do transmittal. Transmittal is where we send in, we transmit all of the sales that we've had, the money we've brought in, how much our approved operating expenses were, and then what our profit is for our investors and profit share would be. And we send a profit share to Keller Williams Realty International and they distribute it. So that's a little bit of that. And when she does transmittal, she has to do it in a timely manner or we get fined if she doesn't submit it timely, because it's around profit share. And so they're not going to play around with the agents not getting the profit share. So there's a penalty if we don't get our stuff in. So that's why you'll hear them be like, I need you to turn your items in, right? So we know what we've got and what we don't have. And we have a daily, the office, get to look at a daily company dollar report. So when that comes in, it shows us how much company dollar has been generated from the sales that you guys have turned in. And then we have a goal for that. So we know if we're ahead or behind, and we look at that. That's something we look at constantly. So there's that piece of operating a large business for an agent that you can mirror and match in terms of the money part and getting out there, because we want to get out there and make sales and do all the things, and the money is very important. And that will make you aware when you have those two accounts and you're able to switch, know how much has got to be in there. I mean, there's a class called Agent Financials that you can take. And we also have one that's Market Center Financials that explains all of the transmittal process and all of the things that go with it. Now that's
Agent Financials. That sounds interesting.
Yeah,
I hadn't heard about that one yet.
I'll see where that's going to be taught, because it usually comes through the region or someplace like that. And I'll check that for you, because that is something that goes through the processes of you and your money for sure. So if you request a detailed budget from any new marketing plan, equipment purchase, or staff position, the proposal should be how much it will increase income, right? Save expenses and cause higher productivity. So all those things. And that is the red light, green light method. If there's not money and it's not going to increase what we're doing, then that's going to be the axe on the neck for that one, for that particular thing you're trying to spend. So when you allow the habit of impulse or urgent spending outside the bounds of your budget, it's the death knell for your net income and how much you're going to take home. So the urgency in your business is lead gen and listings, and the deliberate slow pace is going to be expense and spending. So that gives you a little bit of a picture of that, and definitely Agent Financials is important. And then on page 253, it pluses that, and it talks about you, the individual. And I feel a lot of bold in this section because it's talking about your growth. Nothing will grow in your business or improve until you do, until you grow, until you approve. So a growth plan is a great thing to have at the beginning of the year on things that maybe you need to increase your skill level around. How can you be better to make the business better? Because it starts with you. And one of the quotes at the top of the page says, work harder on yourself than your job, right? And your business will be ultimately a reflection of you and how you've grown, improved, and changed. And your growth will actually supersede the growth of your business. So you have to your ability to do it and your willingness to do it are two different things. And I talked to a lot of agents that aren't with Keller Williams over the years, and quite frequently, I will have someone say to me, "Oh, I heard y'all it's mandatory that you come to training. I don't like to go to training. I don't need that." So that's my first red flag. Okay. That's not working on yourself. That's not a growth mindset. That is a limiting mindset. And we know from the 6 perspectives that high achievers in any industry, in anything, in any sport, They are learning based and they never stop learning and stop improving. So for someone to say that, they are stagnant at that point, not wanting to grow themselves, and that's their business is going to stay at that level. So that's not something that that you want to have, and you might have to work on it. Maybe you don't love going to training, and there's a mindset change around that for sure. So the high achievers we worked with and interviewed dedicated significant money and time toward personal development. And that is usually their big why of why they're doing business. And we've talked about the big why in the past. It is to be their best, to leave that legacy of someone else, seeing how they did their best, and then and making that something that's encouraging and empowering to people around them because of what they've accomplished. So I love that as well. And it says to maintain the ability to maintain your focus on the 20% of the business that matters most. What do you guys think that is? What do you think the 20% of your business is that matters most? Drop it in the chat, the comments with your models. Connie, if you had to guess, what would be the most important thing that you needed to do every day that's the top of the list to get done?
So for me, I'm always right. It's I don't know if it's, I follow this process, but I break things down from a year to a quarter to a week to a day. And those 20% is, where am I trying to get for this year that I wasn't at last year, and what do I need to do or to change and spend time on to get there? So like for me, part of that 20% is professional growth, because I'm new to this industry. So I spend a lot of time on specific aspects of things that I know my skill sets need to get better at. That is one area that will always be in my 20%. And I put that on my calendar and ensure that I am working towards those goals specifically for the business. So I'm seeing, how am I doing? How did I do? How did I do this week, this day, this quarter? Because ultimately that will tell me where I'm at the end of the year.
I love that. And you know what that sounds like? Because you mentioned, your future goal and your monthly goal and your weekly goal and your daily goal. And that sounds very much like a form we have called a 411, where you put what you're going to do in the year, what your big rocks are. And the big rocks are the top 20%, right? You put them in the jar first because they fit in the jar if you put them in first. And all the little rocks are the 80%, and all the sand and all the extra, they go in last, because you can't fit the big rocks in first if you put all that in first. So your 20% on how you're going to get better in business, how many, the listings that you need to take, the leads that you need to find, the self-improvement, all of that is in that 411. And so when you put that in your calendar, that's how you get that 20% done. So that definitely is a written strategy on how to take care of the 20% for sure. And welcome, Wendy. Wendy, I don't know how long you waited in the chat room or the waiting room, but you are very patient, and I just saw you. So welcome to the Zoom. We're glad you're here. So I think that 20% is something that successful people look at, and they make sure they're tracking it like you are, Polani, and that they're getting the business and the leads and the lead generation in, and their self-improvement. So also number 2 is going to be these are the 2 areas of personal development, is your ability to maintain a sense of balance in your life. Now, that the reason for that is so you'll have the energy to do what you said, Polani, to look at a daily and a weekly and not get a burnout, because so many people in this industry get burned out. They don't find a balance, and that is very hard to do. If you don't find time to create joy and space. And I mean, I know this buzzword drives me insane, but I'm going to say it: self-care. So there it is. And balance will give you energy to reach your goals. So is there something that you guys do here on Zoom, or those watching Facebook Live, comment for us. That helps you get your life balance back. And that's the things over here that give you joy, your family, your hobbies, your friends, some time to just make your battery back again that you've drained by working so hard. What do you guys think?
For me,
Mm-hmm.
it's spending time with family. That always rebalances me.
Well, I hope that you were able to put that in your schedule to get to that point. Do you have that scheduled, or do you know that it's kind of like you're like, I'm
I do. I have
that
it
I need
scheduled.
to pull away?
I have it scheduled. So I try to make sure that I don't put any types of appointments on those days if I can help it. They're always open for specifically, like I like to take my Mondays and Sundays seem to work best for our household
Mhm.
to either, I bake something or I make dinner or, just spending time watching TV, which I don't normally do very often. But yeah,
Well, I know Wendy put in the chat that she makes time to work out, and that is a stress reliever for her and gets her back in the game and resets her when she's had, a week or a day or whatever that looks like. That's maybe starting to create that burnout. And I love that you do the cooking and that you have it scheduled on your calendar. I think we're back to that calendar thing. That's super important. And it says on page 254 that you have two choices, and it's either to be focused or unfocused. And I love the graphic on here and the 20%. See how it's got this like craziness going on? I know some of you will identify with the top one. This is what it feels like. And then focus looks like this. And the good news is that we're going to talk about the One Thing book next, and it's a focus book. So if you're living here and you need help, please join us for that. Right. So you get to choose if you're going to be focused or not focused. And on the next several pages, you guys that are watching as well, on 255 to 258, it gives you how to get to that 20% and hit the things that you need to hit in your goals. It gives you a worksheet, or it gives you in Gary Keller style, right? It tells you here's where you are and here's where you go. And here's the description of how to make sure you get your big rocks in and you focus. And then on the next couple of pages, it gives you an action plan for you to write out what you're going to do. And then over here, this is the 20%. This is all the other stuff. These are the little rocks, the 80% that can fill up your jug, and you can't fit your big rocks in when you filled it up with little, right? They don't work. Try it sometime. So there's the brain dump. What's most important? What do I just mark off? And I need to get them done, but I don't need to get them done right now. And then there's a daily worksheet here in the book as well that gives you a time block. Very nice. And then this says that you've got to block and follow those focus times on your calendar, and that you're not going to live a completely balanced life, but you're going to be counterbalancing all the time. Just like if you are standing up right now and you lifted one, which I'm doing, you're lifting one foot up off the floor, you'll find yourself that you're kind of doing this to keep your balance. It's the same way in your business. So you may have to be in a counterbalanced state to maintain an even flow of energy and to get the things you need to get done because burnout happens. And high achievers counterbalancing, and the challenge lies between work and non-work activities for you to hit that high number. So at the bottom of the page, because we're almost out of time, it talks about the analogy of a skier.
Dad said it's raining downtown.
So the skier is 75% of the time on the descent is in the air. They're trying to balance, they're trying to land, they're trying not to wipe out, right? From mound to mound, from bump to bump. Skiers are airborne and off balance and out of control a lot of the times, but they've learned how to counterbalance to keep them from crashing. So when they hit, they're doing this, right? So they're maintaining their speed to get to the bottom, but they're learning to do that. And that's what you guys are going to have to do to hit numbers at a high level and run a high running business, or even in your day-to-day life, is you're going to have to leverage and hire talent, set standards, implement systems and tools, and that makes counterbalancing easier and focusing on the things that matter most in that 20%. So when someone that's really successful seems to appear balanced, it is an illusion. They have learned the art of counterbalancing. So to net $1 million, you are going to have these 16 challenges. And the next thing we're going to talk about is going from net $1 million to receiving $1 million. It's the most difficult to achieve. And there's some really good nuggets in talking about it. So don't check out on us yet. We're almost done. And thank you guys for joining me today. Polani and Wendy, it's so much fun when I have people to talk to. And I appreciate you so much. I know you're going to have an amazing week this week, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.